Hi there, it's Jo from Minerva. Welcome to a sew-along for Burda 6516, which is a fitted jumpsuit. It's got a tie belt and belt loops, pleated front and back, binding faced armholes, inseam pockets and a belt. You can also add the sleeves from view B and put them onto view A if you would like to add sleeves to your jumpsuit. This is my second attempt at this pattern. My first one I had a few fitting issues. It was quite tight under the arms and I couldn't get the waistline to be on my waistline, so then when I tied my belt was in the wrong place. I'm going to show you some of the fitting issues I had and how I'm going to correct some of those on my second attempt. This looks quite complex, but I've really done a lot of fitting on here just to show you more than anything. I probably wouldn't do quite so much on every garment that I make, but I wanted to particularly have a second go at this jumpsuit. So the first thing I did was pin the shoulders together and tried it on as a tissue fit. I made sure that the back matched up with my back centre line. It didn't, so I took a little piece out of here which stopped a gaping back armhole. I always do a sway back adjustment, so that's an adjustment where I take a wedge out of the centre back and grade out to the side. Because I'd taken two lots out here, my body was then short, and I think that's what happened the first time round. I took quite a wedge out from my sway back and then my waist was too short, so I've put back what I want to get me back down to my waistline. Of course, if I do that on the back, then I need to do it on the front. So I had a gaping front armhole, so I took a little pinch out of there and made sure the centre front matched my centre front, and I put back what I'd taken off, so now my front and back matched. Once I'd made all these alterations, the sides didn't fit, so I added a very big 1-inch seam allowance. So you can see this looks a bit ridiculous here, but that's because that much is all seam allowance. I've given myself that on the side because I've made lots of adjustments. What it has done is it's given me a little bit more under each armhole, which will stop the armhole being too big. I pinned it all together and I tried it on again, and it was a much better fit. Of course, if you make alterations to the top, you will need to alter some pieces that attach to it. So my trouser leg had to have a little bit more put on the side, and my front trouser leg needed a little bit more on the side. So those are just some of the alterations that you could try to get a better fit on the upper body of your jumpsuit. Choosing a jumpsuit gives you the fantastic opportunity to fit the top and the bottom separately. So if you've got wide hips compared to your waist ratio, then a jumpsuit is a really good option because you can fit the top and then you can make adjustments to the bottom and you can have a much wider fit. You can do it the other way around. If you've got a large bust but you've got small hips, then you can make the top half bigger and you can change the trousers to match. So a jumpsuit that has a split seam along the waistline is a really good way of ensuring that you get a good fit. Anyway, today's a sew-along, not a fitting tutorial. So let's start with number 1 on the instructions, and I will follow the pattern as if you were sewing along at home. The fabric I'm using today is a solid colour because I already have a very patterned jumpsuit. That's this one, which is the L jumpsuit, more casual elasticated waist. And this is a chambray, a cotton chambray, so that I can get a denim look jumpsuit but without all the bulk of denim. So chambray is much lighter than denim. It's people do confuse chambray with a very light denim. It is actually a shirting fabric, a cotton shirting fabric. So this one I'm going to wear with really brightly coloured necklace and shoes. I've already cut out all of my pieces and I'm not going to go through cutting out because I'm assuming if you're making this jumpsuit then you've sewn before. So I'm going to cut out all my pieces and then get back to the machine and thread up some thread. First part of the pattern is to put pleats in the front. So you will see these pleats are making the bust shaping. Don't just pin them and not tack them, because pleats, if you just put one pin in, they just sort of peel open and then this doesn't stay lined up at the bottom. If you're tacking pleats, tack them well past the seam line and put huge big crosses through the pleat, because that will stop it peeling open while you're sewing it and handling the fabric. If you're handling a fabric like I am, which is the same on both sides, just be aware that you're getting your pleats going the right way. So you haven't got one pleat going one way and one pleat going another. To make the pleat, you pull the two lines together in the direction of the arrow. And these pleats like this in a cross shape, I'll show you, make it really secure when you're sewing. So when you take them out, that's not going anywhere now, and it's not slipping when you're trying to attach the bottom on. It doesn't matter how you do it, that one's a bit messier, but it's just holding all of that fabric down so that the bottom doesn't peel out. And on the reverse, I did a ladder of tacking just to hold that down, because that pleat's a little bit narrower, so I didn't quite have room to do the crosses on there. But just one row of tacking doesn't really do the business, and one pin certainly won't hold it together so that you get really accurate pleats, because the pleats are the fitting of this top. So tack all the pleats and give them a press. Because I've done some extra fitting, then I have drawn on my seam line with a chalk pencil, so that helps me to get the fit that I got when I tried it on, and also it helps me to see which is the wrong side of the fabric. The other thing that helps me see the wrong side of a fabric that's the same on both sides is I put a safety pin on the wrong side, and then I know that if I can see the safety pin when I'm sewing, that I'm sewing the correct way. And in my mind, it makes me think if I was wearing something, I wouldn't want the safety pin to be showing the right way. So I know that the right side doesn't have any markings on it, and the wrong side has safety pin showing, and chalk mark showing. Time to sew the end of the pleats down and the shoulder seams. Next, it's time to start working on the trousers. The trousers are shaped with darts, not with pleats. So you're going to make a dart on the front and the back and press towards the side seam. Tie the end of your dart, start at the widest part, back tack, sew to the end very gradually, and then press. After pressing, your dart should look pretty invisible. Before I put the pockets on, which have a 1.5 seam allowance here, because I've made some alterations to the top, I want to make sure that the opening, waist opening, fits my bodice, because it's a fitted jumpsuit. So I've just tacked together the side seams. I've got a really big seam allowance. I've got a 1-inch seam allowance on the hip, and then back to 1.5 on the leg. So I'm going to tack the trousers to the top and try it on and check that I've got the hip fit right, and check that I've got that wide leg swinging trouser that I'd like, and then I can decide where the seam line is going to be and attach my pocket accordingly. Because if I put my pocket on now and then I need to take the side seam in. I'm going to be interfering with the pocket. So make sure when you're making a jumpsuit that you're continually trying it on for the best fit. Now I've made my trouser fitting changes, I can apply the pocket. I've taken this back to a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. So you're going to put your pockets onto your trouser piece. There are some notches to match up, and you're going to do that on both sides of the front and back, and then take a leg seam from the top round the pocket and down to the hem. The seam you're going to take now is from the outer pocket up to the mark, and then down this side leg, the out seam. The one seam will be longer than the other, so you'll need to ease those in, and you're going to do the same on the other side. So you will notice that this layer is slightly bigger than this layer, so you'll be matching up the notches on the side and then easing in the difference here. Where your pocket meets the side leg, you'll need to clip up into that space to release the pocket. So use sharp scissors, clip through the seam allowances, but not through the stitching. And that will mean that your pocket can release and be part of the side seam. When it's pressed like this side, you'll have your pocket opening and your side seam all pressed, so that just becomes, your pocket is called an inseam pocket. And this side that's not pressed, you can see, just needs a little bit of handling to get all of that flat. The last part of the leg construction is the crotch seam, and it's quite advisable to try the trousers on, check that the top is coming to your waist seam, and just put a safety pin in there and check that you can sit down, stand up, bend down without splitting any of the seam. You can clip the crotch seam just so that you get a better curve there, and make sure that everything's lined up all along the inseam. It's time now you finished the trousers to add the top to the trousers. So you're going to want your items right sides together, match up the back seam. Let's take all the key points first, match up the side seam and match up your pleats with the darts. You'll need to ease the rest of the top to the bottom of the garment, and then you can sew the top to the bottom with your 1.5 seam allowance, and make sure that you can see the markings for the belt carriers. Next we're going to add the belt carriers, so pin those in place. Make sure you don't catch the pleats. We're going to insert an invisible zip. This is quite a lightweight one with a meshy side, which is good because it's not committing to one colour. You open the zip. This is the right side, so you're going to put right sides together. So all of the zip will be facing you. Line up the top, pin in place, and I'm following the overlocker mark down the side to give me that 1.5 seam allowance, and that's how I measured it when I fit it. The bottom of the zip should be open so that you've got room to do the handling at the end, and you have your zip pinned in. You can tack it in if you want to, if you're not confident. And then you should have the other side of the zip facing you, not on that side. I'm going to sew this in with a zipper foot, an invisible zipper foot, because I need to make sure that I'm getting really, really close to the teeth. This is an invisible foot. It's got a little toe at the front that peels the zip out of the way, and two little grooves in the bottom that the zipper teeth run along. So your needle goes through the hole in the top, the toe peels away the teeth, and the teeth remain in the groove. I've attached the zip to one side, zipped it up, and now I'm going to attach the other side, but I'd like to make sure that my waist seam is going to be lined up. So I'm going to line the waist seam up and mark the zip with a pen so that I know that place is critical. Even if it doesn't quite line up with the cut of my fabric, I absolutely want to make sure that that waistline is matched up. And where I'm going to stop so it matches the other side. Now I can pin the rest on. To finish the bottom, we need to join the crotch seam up to the end of the zip. So you're going to fold the seam over and keep the zip out of the way, and locate where the last stitch is, which is why we were trying to make sure that both sides were the same. Now we're going to rejoin the seam here, come up the crotch seam, and then catch the last 1 or 2 stitches along the bottom of the zip. You need to be quite accurate there if you can, because that will mean that you get a completely flush side on the invisible zip side. If you just catch a little piece of fabric like that I've got there, you'll get a little bubble at the end. So make sure you get a really smooth line to join the end of your zip, and ensure you don't catch the end of the zip. your zips in, you should have the waistline matching up here, smooth line running from the bottom of the zip into the crotch so that you don't even know there's a zip. And there's the invisible zip there. If you press it, close it and press it. If you press it when it's open, you'll need to use a press cloth to make sure you don't melt the edge of the zipper teeth. Now we can move on to the next bit. You can now prepare the facing unit. So these are the two back facings, matching up the shoulder seams and neatening the edge of your facing. You can use a zigzag or an overlock, and those are the interfaced pieces ready to go on the neck. We are now going to attach the facing unit. So with right sides together, match the shoulder seams and keep all of the seam allowances nice and open and flat so you don't get bulky shoulders. There's some notches to match up so you can get your centre front nice and neat, and the back should match back round to the back seam. Pin this on all the way and follow your procedure for a facing, which is to sew on a 1.5 seam allowance and then clip the curve, understitch the facing and press in place. When you finish putting the facing on, the last part of applying the facing is to turn the ends under and hand sew them in. Make sure you don't get them too close to the zipper teeth because you don't want the facings to be catching in the zipper teeth, but you also don't want them to be in the way. So attach them to the zipper tape with a hand sew and make sure that the tops are level. You can use a slip stitch here, whip stitch. Just make sure that the end of the zipper tape is all attached to the facing. If you want to, you can pick stitch through and go back into the same space, and that's a pick stitch. It's this tiny little spot, and that will just keep the end of the zipper tape folded over. We're going to start working on the armholes. I really recommend you zigzag or overlock the edge of the armholes, because when you add a binding, and because you're making it so narrow and neat, it's one of the places that it will split and come undone, and that's just because that area is under a bit of pressure with you moving your arms. To finish the armhole, we're going to use some binding, and it's quite narrow, which is why I'm recommending that you overlock or finish this edge. You can open out the binding and sew it to the edge with right sides together and the raw edges even. If you think that raw edge even is going to give you too tighter fraying space, then you can move down a little bit, but you can't move lots because you can't have loads of that arm edge fabric all stuck inside, and it's going to act like a facing, and then we will roll it over and sew it along the inside. So I'll show you that whole procedure. So the first thing to do is to pin it under the arm, so that's where you have your join. And it's up to you. If you want to pin, you can, but it's quite narrow, so you might want to just manage that under the machine with your fingertips so that you can get it in just the right place. I'm going to sew this all the way around onto the armhole edge. Once you've attached the binding, you'll have quite a raw edge. I wouldn't trim it out. Sometimes you layer it out so you don't get too much bulk, but because it's such a narrow seam allowance, I'm going to leave it there because that's the piece that I have zigzagged. I'm going to press it away from the top and then fold it down, and the armhole will be faced with binding but without all of the bulk of a full facing. A few little hairy bits, get those off. You get a really neat neckline finish here and the armhole finish here. The pattern says you top stitch, so you would top stitch 0.7 millimeters from the edge, just under a centimetre, or if you just prefer to get a neater finish by hand sewing down your armholes, you can do that as well, so that's your choice. We're going to sew around the tie belt and clip the corners so that we get really crisp corners. I've just used my pinking shears just to make sure that end doesn't fray, and then I'm going to turn it out. I've got a set of Prim turning tubes which are fantastic, even for a big item like this. It just makes it super quick. So you put the tube inside the tube and then you use the stick to push it through, and then the fabric rolls on the smooth tube, and then you can use the pointy end to push out the corners. You want to make sure that if you're changing the belt at all, that it's going to fit in your belt carriers. Remember, your belt carriers were 7 centimeters wide, so you don't want anything too thick. If you want a more bunched look, you can do one a bit thicker, but you don't want it to be bulky around your waist. The turning place for that was in the center, so we can now sew that up and press the tie. I'm hemming my jumpsuit now. I've just tried it on and I'm taking quite a deep hem, and I'm going to hand sew it, not top stitch it, because I'll probably wear this for casual times where I wear flat sandals, but I'm going to slip stitch the hems in case I want to let them down if I wear them with heels for a different event. It's just a little hem tip that somebody told me, and it really gives your clothes a bit more longevity and a bit more versatility. Jumpsuit finished. It was Burda 6516. You get a fantastic opportunity to fit the top separately to the bottom. So I could make sure that I'm really short-waisted, that the belt and the waist is on my waist, so you can see that's running parallel to the floor and the side seam is running down. If I changed anything, I'd probably sew the top of that pocket down an inch, because I could still get in and out, but I just wouldn't get that sort of extra ballooning that I'm getting just there. I could make it more fitted, but when I do that it does exaggerate the pocket there, so I think I might sew that down just 1 inch at the top. I've got my hems that I can change. I've got easy fitting in the bust here with the pleats. Got a really smooth neckline. I've got the right width of shoulders. You need to make sure you've got the right width of shoulders, because if they stick out it does look a little bit unusual. And at the back I did the sway back adjustment. Still got a little bit of blowing there, so it was quite hard to fit the centre back on myself. Tissue fit I could do with a sewing partner to help me out. Do make an account for yourself and join the Minerva sewing community. You can check out inspirational makes from other makers, and of course we'd love to see what you've made. Take a picture of yourself anywhere, in the garden, in the kitchen. It really doesn't matter, we just love to see what you've made. Come back again soon for more sew-alongs, tips and tutorials. Thanks very much for watching. See you again soon.